My guest today on Dan's Talks is Scott Ferrara, the author of a new book called Accused of Witchcraft in New York. I'm particularly interested in this book because Mr. Ferrara has done a tremendous amount of research on one piece of East End history that most of us, or some of us, know about, which was the accusation and later trial of in the 17th century of an East Hampton wife named Goody Garlick, and who was this was prior, I think, to the Salem witchcraft trials up in New England, but it was the witchcraft accusations were in the air. And I've read some of it, and I'll talk to you about some of the things you found. Before I do, I just want to tell people that this was about a young woman, 18-year-old woman in East Hampton, who in the middle of the night woke up and accused Goody Garlick of being a witch, who also lived in the town. And then the young woman, who was also the daughter of the leader of the village, then died at 18, and things progressed from there. Anyway, one of the things I read in your account, which I did not know, having written about this for the paper, was that she was not from East Hampton. She was from Southampton. Southampton was settled by a different group of settlers than East Hampton, and so she was, in that sense, a foreigner. Tell a little more about that night and her accusation. And I'd like to hear more about some of the other ones, including one in which the chief of the Montaukes was accused of hiring a witch.
Yeah. So the account of Elizabeth Garlick, or she's often known as Goody Garlick, for her title, Goodwife, a shortened form. She was accused when she was, we think, between the ages of 45 and 55 years old, daughter of French Huguenots. So for mostly English settlers who were coming from Lynn, Massachusetts, who settled in the Hamptons, she was already seen as an outsider.
Yeah.
She didn't, her and her husband, Joshua Garlick, they didn't really have money starting off. They weren't anyone of prominence really towards the beginning, when they first came to the Hamptons. But over time, through decisions and their own labors, they actually prospered a little bit within the village, and this was also attributed to her witchcraft accusations. It's this sudden prominence.
What was she accused of?
So she was accused in 1650, a little bit after 1650, by Elizabeth Howell. Of course, as you mentioned, that was the daughter of Lion Gardiner. She had married a man by the name of Arthur Howell, and she was very she had taken ill some unspecified illness. We're not really sure today what that illness was. We could speculate, but Elizabeth Garlick was known to be a healer within the community, and there were already accusations and suspicions. I wouldn't say accusations, but suspicions about Elizabeth Garlick that originated back when all of these settlers were living in Lynn, Massachusetts, before they had made the journey down to the Hamptons.
What were some accusations?
Say again?
Yeah, the accusations came out at a trial. What were the accusations?
Sure. Yeah. So one of them were an infant had died within the town And before that infant died, Elizabeth Garlick, who was a known healer, had remarked at the infant and noticed that this infant wasn't behaving normally, right? And the mother, a very young mother, with her first time child, I believe it was Goody Simons was her name. She listened to Elizabeth Garlick, but shortly after this encounter, the infant had died, and she had in her grieving had accused Elizabeth Garlick of harming the baby through witchcraft.
Wasn't there something with animals also that she was?
Yeah. So with every passing of every infant that died in the community, we had people such as an individual named Goody Davis, who had been telling mothers of deceased infants that Goody Garlick was behind it, and soon every infant that died was now blamed on Goody Garlick. Things heated up towards the center of towards the middle of the 1650s. We had a pig who had died, an ox that broke its leg. There was an enslaved African boy who had gone missing, and there was another man who had died from mysterious illness. And things were very tense during this period. And Elizabeth Garlick was blamed for all of it.
Were they moving to set her on fire or do something to locally that was going to happen unless there was some intervention?
Yeah. So there were no witches, or I should say, people accused of witchcraft that were set on fire within the United States. That was purely a European thing. But within East Hampton, local magistrates, local authorities, they were very cautious to prosecute them. So they actually referred it up to the next higher court, which was in Hartford, Connecticut. And there we had the then, I believe it was the Lieutenant Governor, then Governor, John Winthrop Jr., who really played a large part in the acquittal of Elizabeth Garlick. I think it was actually pretty interesting because she was not only acquitted. John Winthrop Jr. Actually had written to the people of East Hampton that they should be nicer to both Elizabeth Garlick and her husband. So it kind of gave, when she returned with, not only was I acquitted, but now I have this power that the highest authority is telling everyone to be nicer to me instead of, hanging her as a witch.
What I also read something I didn't know about. One of the things that Elizabeth Howell's father had done was made peace with Wyandanch, who was the sachem of the Montauk tribe at that time, and the two of them actually worked together for some things. And so Wyandanch is a good part of the history of the Hamptons. But then someone accused Wyandanch of doing witchcraft. I never knew about that, and I'd never heard about it, but you did, and more power to you. Tell us a little bit about what that was about.
Sure, yeah. So Sachem Wyandanch and one of his predecessors, Sachem Bogatakut, they were both associated with witchcraft accusations during the 17th century. A large part of what I was trying to do in my book was not, because most witchcraft histories you read are purely, a large part of them are purely European based, European individuals, Euro-American settlers. But this is not the case with our history in the United States. Of course, we have largely culturally entangled communities local indigenous tribes, enslaved African people, all during the 17th century. They were all kind of living together and had these really entangled communities. So talking about not only Euro-American settlers accused, but also other communities was a large part of what I was trying to do with this book and my research.
Who used Wyandanch?
Yeah, so with these Native American tribes within the Northeast, a lot of them, certain tribal communities had partnerships. Is one way to describe it with local European communities, right? So these tribal entities would sometimes use colonial authorities to accuse their tribal enemies. So we had Uncas up in Connecticut, a sachem in Connecticut, who had accused Wyandanch of hiring a witch to attack him. Uncas himself was trying to use colonial authorities to take power from tribal communities on Long Island. So it was really a politically charged action. This is not always the case. Sometimes it's politically charged, but for the most part, witchcraft was just a reality during the 17th century. It was real as anything.
Well, of course, I guess our interest is mostly about the Hamptons and the North Fork and the eastern end of the Long Island. And I think in your book you wrote in all of New York State there were dozens of such events. But confining yourself just to what this podcast is about, were there other incidents involving accusation of witchcraft in our community?
Yeah, definitely. So about 25 years after Elizabeth Garlick, so that's about 1683, there's another woman by the name of Hannah Trevally. Hannah is, I should say before this, that women don't usually make it into the historical record, right? It's only very rare instances that we get to learn about women in the historical record. But with Hannah, we see her quite often because she was married 3 times. She lost 3 husbands. And also her father was Barnabas Horton, a very prominent figure in Long Island history, very prominent landowner in Southold. And Hannah was the 4th child of Barnabas. She marries an individual by the name of Thomas Hildreth. That was her first husband. They together they have 4 children.
Southampton settler.
Yes, Southampton settler. They lived in an area called Flying Point. It's like the western banks of Mecox Bay. I think that's Watermill, New York.
Yep.
Unfortunately, he passed away in 1657. She was in her 20s. She ends up remarrying a man by the name of Jonas Bauer, who's a weaver. They have another 4 children. She moves to his homestead, which is on Sebenak Neck, I think the Sebenak Golf Club today. Sabonic, sorry. It's between Cold Spring Pond and Bullhead Bay. And unfortunately, he actually dies in 1671. This is her second husband. And then her third husband, Thomas Trevally, they marry in 1681. He was a cooper, barrel maker. And during this time, with this third husband, she actually gets accused by, actually, I should say before that, her father passes away in 1681. Barnabas Horton leaves her pretty good, a sizable estate, about 10 sheep, some money as well. And around this time, she gets accused by this man named Edward Lacey. He's a fairly new settler. He accuses Hannah of setting his corn on fire, sitting on his roof at night. He claims that he was hag-ridden, which means this type of sleep paralysis, sleep demons, and all that, and nightmares. That she was behind all of it. And he accuses her. He tries to sue her with this, and fortunately, it's dismissed. If you think about the dynamics in the community, Hannah is the daughter of a prominent settler in the area. She is associated with not only the Trevally family, but the Bowers and the Hildreths, her past husband. And she had a large community support behind her. And Edward Lacey, who's essentially no one in the town, she wins, right? They actually dismissed the case.
Was there ever a trial about it, or just a hearing?
Say again?
Was there ever a hearing or a trial?
No, it never went to trial. This is actually the last time we hear of Edward Lacey in the Hamptons too. I tried searching for him after this event, and I couldn't find any mention of him. So he might have left town after the event.
Any other witchcraft events on the East End? Or?
Not in the 16 and 1700s. This belief and fear in witchcraft, it definitely persists. Not as strongly as the 17th century, though. There are folklore accounts, and there are some mentions here and there in local histories. There is a folkloric account of witchcraft, not so much on the East End, but in Brookhaven, individual named Auntie Greenleaf, and this is very similar to the Goody Garlic story, and actually Auntie Greenleaf sounds very similar to Goody Garlic, and a lot of the details of this folklore are very similar to the Garlic account.
This is a book, Accused of Witchcraft in New York, and Scott Ferrara has the author of it. And I wondered how you became interested in writing about all this.
Yeah, sure. So I actually served in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and after I got out, I rolled in college, and got really interested in history and archaeology, and I actually study ancient plant use. That's my specialty of archaeology, and with ancient plant use, especially in the early modern period, right? This time before the 17th century. Every now and then you see herbal healers and accounts of witchcraft. So it excited me. And also, when you talk about history, sometimes people aren't always interested, right, in listening to history. But when you say things like witchcraft and magic and divination, people's ears perk up a little bit. Yeah. So that's definitely motivated me to keep researching and keep looking into these.
Are you planning on a further book on another topic?
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of accounts in New York, as well as the rest of the state, of witchcraft beliefs persisting into the 18 and 1900s. So I thought that would be a pretty cool project to continue this with.
Will you be having a reading or a book at a bookshop out east here?
Yes. The Quag Library in let's see, that's May 6th, I believe, at I'm not sure what time. I think maybe 3 p.m. It'll be on their website.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a great little library, by the way, just so you know.
Oh,
And just out of curiosity, where do you live? And now, and I guess you're waiting for your first child, and so that's exciting.
yeah, yeah. I'm located in Massapequa. And yeah, I definitely frequent the Hamptons quite a lot. I'm very interested in the resting places of a lot of these accused individuals. One thing I've always been interested in is, where exactly is Elizabeth Garlick, as well as Hannah Trevally? Where are they laid to rest? I haven't been able to locate either of their headstones yet.
I
I
think
know.
that Garlic may have been buried on Gardiner's Island because, as I understood it, the townspeople never quite forgave her, and she and her husband were taken under Gardiner's wing to his private island, and he worked for him as part of the farmers up there.
Yeah, they had lived there for quite a bit of time before they moved closer into East Hampton. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility that they could be buried there. Would love to find out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure you know about where the grave is for Lion Gardner, right?
Yeah, on the common burial grounds in East Hampton, right on the
Well, I
square there.
don't know if you know this piece of history, where he's buried under I guess it's, what is it, a sarcophagus of him lying down with a sword and wearing armor.
Yeah.
He actually did that. He fought in Saybrook, Connecticut, to build a fort against the Pequods. He was hired by the English to come to America to protect them on there. But he came from Holland, where he was originally in the army there, and they had given him breastplates. This was in the
Oh,
1630s,
wow.
20s. He was a fighter, and he brought all that to New England, and the accounts of him. There's a famous drawing of him wearing that stuff while he's fighting with the Pequods outside of Old Saybrook, which is where he was hired to build a fort. So it's not just a romantic thing for him. It was actual.
Wow. Yeah.
I
So
don't know if he was buried in it, but they acknowledge it.
wow. John Winthrop Jr., who acquitted Elizabeth Garlick, he actually had written to Lion Gardner to come out, and he actually commissioned Lion Gardner to build the fort at Saybrook. And Lion Gardner actually accompanied Elizabeth Garlick to the trial. So some witchcraft scholars believe that having someone as prominent, Lion Gardner, there with you might have influenced the case, might have made her seem a little bit more important.
Also, when Lion Gardner moved to Gardiner's Island in East Hampton for peace and quiet after fighting in the wars up there, which he was not hired as a soldier, he was hired as a fort builder. He wrote a handwritten diary about all of it, saying how bad it was and how people shouldn't be fighting like this. And he sent it to Winthrop, and it was found in Winthrop's estate about 50 years later. And I've read it. If you sometime want to get you can probably find it in the library. I think I printed it out somewhere, but it's certainly worth looking into reading. You can get
That's
a hold of it.
incredible. Yeah.
So it's written in that old English style, which is hard to read, but never.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to talk to you and make your acquaintance, and want to wish you the best in further book you might write. and especially with this one, which I'm sure is going to be very valuable history for the whole state as well as here on Long Island. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
thanks for coming.
Great. Thanks. It was great seeing you and meeting you.
You too, and good
Thanks.
luck. You have a name for a boy or a girl?
No, we're not disclosing it quite yet. Not till she's born. Yeah. All right.
Bye.
All right. Take care.